So that's great. I would love to chat about that. Basically, they need to do it best. Well, for them, yeah. What's that? There are opportunities right now.
So 130 years old. Yeah.
No, thank God. I know.
Sticking with the name. It's good to hear research. This meeting of the Livingston Commission is called to order. And we have roll call, please. Chairperson Holder? Yes. Commissioner Schwartz?
Present.
Commissioner Freeman?
Present.
Commissioner Sandberg?
Present.
Commissioner Mealy?
Here.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Okay, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda tonight is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Please come to the podium or sign in, come to the podium, state your name and address. Sure. Good evening. So first I want to say thank you. I'm so glad that I can come to this meeting and make some comments and then skedaddle back to my two small children. So thank you for this opportunity. And I want to take a minute to just share. Will you state your name and address? Thank you. Michelle Uberada, 711 Lock Lane, here in Livingston. So I want to comment on a couple of things on the agenda. First, the discussion about the downtown streets. And I want to acknowledge that there was a great conversation several meetings ago about downtown streets and the direction of the City Commission. And I really support the City Commission taking a second look at how we plan for our downtown streets. I appreciate the decision at that previous meeting. And I want to say that I support the presentation that Patricia is going to give on behalf of the downtown businesses from Dan Burden. And I'm really happy to see the engagement from downtown businesses in how our downtown looks, feels, and walk. How do we live downtown? And as a parent, as a community member, safety is one of my top priorities, and connectivity and accessibility for our youngest and our oldest populations. So, and I believe that Dan Burden is an expert. He's been really providing very thoughtful comment around the country, and I would encourage the commission to take a heartfelt look at that study. And then the second comment I want to make is in support of the Parks and Trails Committee's request to reconfigure the north fence along the second park. So I want to just voice my support for that. And then also speaking on behalf of, with my work hat on the Park County Environmental Council, we're really excited to see the commission looking at community parks, connectivity, and how our community can walk and get to open lands and open spaces for the health of our communities and our children. Those are really important values that we share. So thank you so much, and forgive me for stepping out.
Just clarification, I thought public comment was for items not on the agenda, and that the public commented on the agenda items as it was presented.
Yes, you did.
Is that right? So I thought that we weren't allowed to comment on when they were on the agenda, that we either had to go to the beginning or the end.
There's always public comment for each agenda item.
Yes, and so that's when you need to address the issue at hand. So whatever the action item, whatever the resolution. So I apologize for not stopping and clarifying that. But you also stated at the beginning, I think I was just listening because you stated that you were needing to leave and had only a moment. So yes, so that we stay on each item and treat it as an individual issue versus.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Thank you for the clarification. I believe there's been a little bit of confusion in the past on how to comment and when, and I would say that I'm absolutely happy to be here when there's an agenda item and to wait until that appropriate moment. But for a member of the community and especially a young parent, just understanding the procedure really helps with civic engagement. So the more that we can clarify that, and I'm happy to share that message, but I would just say that it's incredibly helpful for the community members to have clear expectations about when and how to comment. That will really increase civic engagement, which I believe is critically important to good government. So should I stay and make another comment, or are my comments counted for the day?
They were listened.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Probably put that in here, you know, that comments should be limited to items that are not on the agenda, you know, whatever.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah, we could clarify that a little better on that.
and I'm glad to know that, and I will share that. I thought I was getting out easy by being able to comment earlier. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment on an item that's not on the agenda?
Good evening. At the last city commission meeting that I attended, the city manager stated.
Jay, could you state your name?
Excuse me, this is Jay Keeper, 325 South Main. Okay. At the last city commission meeting, the city manager said that the day before this May street sweeping, he said there'll be no tickets that will be issued there. Well, I've got evidence item A. I got a ticket on there, and it was parked on right across the museum, and now we have visitors coming into the museum, and they park there, and they don't know that it is your street sweeping day. There is no signage that it's street sweeping day, and if you go to the website at the city, somehow I was able to get it, and your hours of operation for the street sweeper are 8 to 3 p.m. That's like waiting for CenturyLink or Charter. So we're going to be at your house sometime between 8 and 3. And I don't have a Jetson car where I can fly around figuring when's the safe time to come by again. And when I did look at it was supposed to have been swept, I think that the bristles were raised on there when they went by. You could not even tell that there was any motion on there. The next item is the recycling center. Is there a reason why the recycling center can't be closed on Monday and opened on Saturday? Here you have one thing you get money from water, sewer, parking tickets, their taxes, your job is to provide services. And as far as I can see, you're doing a lousy job of providing services to the city residents. Thank you very much. And I'm really surprised that I guess you got glowing results in your evaluation. I find that hard to believe. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to show respect and decorum, please.
Well, but it's due.
It is due. Any other public comment, please? Last call on public comment. Right, next on our agenda, we have 2 consent items. Do I have a motion on the consent items, or are there any consent items we want to pull and discuss? And I have a motion. Anyone?
Yes, make a motion to pass consent items A and B.
Warren's looking away, I'll second.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Short. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Present, 4, yeah.
Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Commissioner Sandberg. Or Commissioner Meany.
4.
Motion passes. Tonight we have one proclamation for rodeo days. Whereas the Livingston Area Chamber of Commerce is hosting rodeo days in conjunction with the Livingston Roundup Association, and whereas the Livingston Roundup is an annual event enjoyed by the greater Livingston community, and whereas the theme of this year's 92nd annual Roundup Parade is Lewis and Clark Trail, and whereas Network Alive Business After Hours occurs on June 28th, the Thursday evening preceding the rodeo from 5:30 to 7 at the Park County Fairgrounds. Now therefore, I, Jarrell Hoagland, Chairperson of the Livingston City Commission, hereby proclaim June 28th through July 4th, 2018 as rodeo days in the city of Livingston. Tonight we have no public hearings, no ordinances, in one resolution. Resolution number 4790, and I flipped it, sorry. Going back to scheduled public comment. Tonight we have the scheduled public comment of the Downtown Coalition to discuss parking options and proposed one-way street. Please come up. Sorry, Patricia. I really didn't mean to do that.
Just pass these around. I know you've seen these before. They're just an easy reference. Thank you so much for putting that written report in the packet. Because I appreciate it so much. You do. Thank you for the opportunity to present this report. We were going to show it, I think at City Commission before, and we were able to do it, so we're grateful that it was put in the packet. Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Downtown Coalition. I'm a poor substitute for Crystal Cipriani and Federico Malatesta, but they couldn't come tonight, so I'm their chief substitute. My name is Patricia Grabo. I live at 204 East Calendar Street. I want to just go briefly through this report. And so first thing I'd like to talk about, just And I'm just gonna highlight a few of the slides, because I know you've had a chance to look at them. The purpose of the burden report is, can a one-way street add more parking than a two-way operations? Is there a better alternative, keeping the historic two-way alive? Might a one-way operation impact volume and retail sales? What other parking solutions should Livingston consider? Does Livingston have a parking problem, or instead of parking management problem? How can parking lots be made functional, attractive, pleasant to walk by? And what other tools can add to the authentic look and feel of Livingston, making the town more walkable and livable? So, there is multiple benefits of two-way streets. We're going to just go through that to just highlight that two-way streets are allow for the mobility, navigation, safety, economics, and relieve congestion. So moving forward to, keep going, the pros and cons for street operations, parking tools. And there are a lot of parking tools that are considered in the burden study that we haven't really discussed in Livingston. And so Dan Burden was brought to Livingston 2 years ago by a coalition of groups as well here in Livingston. So angled in parking, angled on both sides, parking bay, seasonal curb extensions, backed in parking, attractive edges for our landscaping, quality edges, and possible compact parking. So moving on to why one-way streets are needed, when they're needed, keep going. Benefits of two-way streets. And so we've talked a little bit about the benefits of two-way streets. He strongly recommends two-way streets for downtown Livingston. Going to slide okay, Main Street. Okay. First of all, Main Street should not be about speed. They should be about going slower. And the studies indicate that you buy more because you have more time to see the retail stores that exist in the downtown. So you're more sensitive to what's going on around you. Two operations should actually slow traffic down about 12 miles per hour. And you'll see that in towns where you have two-way operations. Drivers are simply driving slower. Okay, parking needs for downtown. We need parking management in Livingston. Now, the burden report only talks about on-street parking. Parking lots is a whole different area of expertise, which he recommends the city getting an expert who deals with parking lots and then working on the configuration of the parking lots. And it does not talk about housing. We have 325 housing units in downtown Livingston we have not addressed parking for. So that would be another really important issue that a coalition can address. But right now, our businesses have been severely impacted by construction, and what we're not looking at yet is how they're going to be severely impacted for the next 5 years. When we redid the streets in front of the Grey Wolf for the next 5 years, our taxes increased by $10,000 a year. So our business had to come up with an additional $10,000 to pay for our streets and the loan on the other half of the streets. And so we are being impacted, but we're also being impacted by the future expense that these businesses are going to carry. So we want to take a look at parking, additional parking, before we end up with the motion last time, talked about 2 years down the road, we could talk about, end up with a coalition that comes up with all the answers. But right now, these businesses, as they come out of construction, are going to need additional parking, and they're going to need all the help they can get to stay alive. Okay, what is a parking space worth? According to Robert Gibbs, American's foremost authority on downtown retail sales and parking, a single parking space in a well-managed, high-end retail district is worth $200,000 a year. So if we can increase parking, in this case, some spots turnover is every 15 minutes, others 2 to 4 hours. So if we can come up with additional parking as soon as the construction is finished, we can assist our downtown businesses. But what the coalition would like to do with our city commission is we would like to bring Mr. Burton out in July. And what we would like to do is have him we'll put together a fun public demonstration of the parking options that are in the Burton report. So the commission, and we'd like MDT, we'd like to invite the commission, MDT, and the city manager to come to this demonstration and then decide for themselves what kind of options they really feel comfortable with. So angle parking, he is discussing the possibility of angle parking on Main Street. Add in angle parking on the side streets on B Street, angle parking on the east side or west side of B Street and the east side of 2nd Street. So it adds a whole significant number of additional parking. Back-in parking on 2nd Street, Callender, and Lewis and Clark Streets. There are concerns, and that's why we would like to have a demonstration so we can actually get a feel for what this actually is, and the public can get a feel for what the city feels. The businesses would give their teeth to have this because it's so hard to have a business and have someone not be able to find a parking spot, go block 3 times, and then at front-end angle parking on B, and back-end angle parking as well. In Montana, they're always concerned about the long trucks. But the demonstration, I think, will be helpful in seeing all the options that we have. And we want to use all the streets in the downtown, not just Main Street as far as additional parking. Just having angle parking on B Street alone adds 20 more spots to our downtown parking area, and that would be 40 if you go 2nd and B. Yeah, go ahead. So, and then diagonal parking on Main Street, if you eliminate the center line, and that's going to be the one that I think MDT and the commission and the public will be fascinated with on how that actually works. It's a pretty effective tool. And eliminating the center line, there's a lot of research on that and how effective that can become. Downtown walkability tools. And parking lots keep this going. And here is back up one. And this is something that Commissioner maybe talked about a little bit at the last meeting, which is instead of having curb extensions in areas where it is very difficult to snow plow around curb extensions per se, if you have temporary curb extensions, seasonal, and then you take them off the street, it allows us to plow in the winter. It allows for people of my age group to be very safe instead of trying to continuously shovel the curb extensions. And it allows for very effective drainage. So Mr. Burton suggested that we take a very serious look at temporary curb extensions in the summer in places we think that would be helpful. They do that in Crested Butte. They do it in Colorado, wherever there's snow in winter of any significance. And then recommendations. So he recommends that we maintain Livingston's two-way street operation to maximize access to places of business, keep speeds low, maintain the right human scale to the street. And I have to say, I was talking with the State Film Office, which is just such a support of two-way streets in downtown Livingston. They said one of the appeals of Livingston, Montana is its human scale. It's not a massive city that you zip right through. It is a human scam. Restore historic angle parking on both sides of the street. This can work as front-end angle parking on both sides for added, or even back-end angle parking can be added on one side. If stakeholders are concerned about the width, apply back-end angle parking. In addition, provide attractive borders to the downtown parking lots. And I want to say quickly that the BID was created. I assess my business every year to pay for the BID, so we have decided to have flower basket. So the downtown businesses are the ones that are providing the flower basket. We are very interested in providing attractive borders for our parking lots, attractive signage, conduct a formal management, parking management study, provide back-end angle parking on Calendar, Lewis and Clark and Second, remove center line to Main Street and consider 90-degree parking in appropriate streets. And I'm going to just commend again this city commission and the Public Works Department for the work that's going on this summer. We have a grateful downtown business area for the work that's going on. It's very difficult on businesses. I've talked to several business owners. They are not paying themselves. They are just holding their own. So the reason we want so much for this commission to consider the burden study and allow us to have a demonstration of this in July with MDT here is so that we can figure out what options we could actually implement right away to assist our businesses as they come out of this construction season, as they look at paying double their taxes for the next 5 years in order to fund their part of the downtown streets. So I thank you so much for, again, thank the city manager. I'm going to give you Mr. Burden's phone number too. He's quite open to any conversations that you might have and questions you might have with him. And as I said, we are looking forward to providing a possible demonstration to bring him up and have us all have an enjoyable time together and take a look at what options we might be able to implement right away once construction is completed. Thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions?
Pretty much speaks for itself.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. They've done a better job.
Well, tonight we don't have any public hearings, no ordinances. And one resolution. We have resolution number 4792, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, of its intent to discontinue and vacate the undeveloped alley adjacent to fractional lot 13-16, all of lots 17 through 20, and fractional lots 21 through 23, all in Block G of the Riverside Addition to the City of Livingston, Montana. Mr. Perdue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's nothing new in this resolution. We went through most of this during the action item. So this is an attempt to allow you to look at the information, talk about it, and discuss it first. This is now the formal process for the vacation itself. So there will be this resolution, and there'll be another item on the next agenda that is either another resolution or an ordinance. There's some ambiguity in the state code right now, so we're going to work through it, see which one it's going to be. But today is just a resolution that codifies what you've already talked about and decided in the last commission.
So we don't need to make a motion.
We do need to make a motion just to pass this resolution, the formal portion of it, but it's not, there's nothing new in this. It's still the same information.
So let's open it up to public comment first, please. Any public comment on resolution number 4792? Please state your name and
Jay
address.
Keeper, 325 South Main. Is there a reason why the landowner's name is not included in the resolution?
Pardon?
It doesn't, it usually is not included
Well-
because it's
Well, it would be
immaterial
nice
to
to
whether or
know,
not the city maintains it.
oh, what? Okay, I'll try to listen to it.
In the main resolution in the packet, her name is stated,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So not in the, just in the briefs at the beginning.
Not on the agenda.
It's what scrolled by so fast, I couldn't read, the particulars. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Commission, any questions or comments?
I just want to state for the record that I do take abandoning property seriously, and I do look at all sides of it, and do believe that on a case by case basis is a way to address it. I just want to go on record saying that how I feel about it, and where I'm coming from and how I approach it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? Warren?
Well, in the previous discussion, there were no real negative aspects brought up about why we should not vacate it. And I don't think any other information has come up since then. So I would think it's the same situation as it was.
Commissioners, anything else? Okay, I thought you were raising your hands. I too, I seldom, and I have said this before, that I seldom support abandoning properties, or easements in this case, but I think this is one of the times I'm more comfortable with it. So do we have a motion from the commission?
Yeah, make a motion we pass resolution number 4792.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Friedman and a second by Navy. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against.
Commissioner Maybe,
Yes.
Motion passes. Tonight, we have action items A through H. Our first action item is to discuss, approve, deny Parks and Trails request to reconfigure the north fence along water reclamation facility property to allow for eventual parking and public access to the city-owned property to the east along the Yellowstone River. Mr. Hardings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the Parks and Trails has representative. If you'd like to listen to them first, we can go from there.
Thank you, Commission, for having me. My name is Gavin Clark. I'm the Vice Chair of the City of Livingston Parks and Trails Committee. Our mission is to advocate on behalf of the public to create and maintain parks and trails, open space, and other outdoor recreational opportunities that undoubtedly enhance the quality of life for residents here in Livingston and those who visit. Over the past 10 years, we have had an eye on safe ways and secure ways to open up access to the area east of the water transfer station along the Yellowstone River. The entire property, which includes the waste transfer station and the water treatment center, is about 70 plus acres. And we think that a little under half or around half of that can be opened up to the public in a safe and secure manner that will open up this gem that resides within the city of Livingston for outdoor recreation and parks and trails. In order to do that, we've had some issues with having safe and secure ways for the public to access this property. Excuse me. And we feel that by modifying the north fence of the entire property will allow some future access and potential parking, and then also to fully secure the entire property, including the waste transfer station. We'd also like to request that the fence be extended down south towards the railroad tracks so that the public can be safe and use this area, but then we're also keeping the facilities there and the utilities that are so special to our community secure as well from the general public.
Thank you, Gavin.
Mr. Curtis?
Would the commission like to ask any questions on Parks and Trails before I get the staff?
Not yet.
So just so I'm clear, is this section already designated as a park, or is your idea is to future develop it into a park?
The idea is to future develop it into a park.
And is that part of what you're requesting now? Are you, I'm just trying to, I realize that you're requesting to configure a fence. With that fence, would that automatically, as your recommendation then to allow the public to begin using that space?
I think that the Parks and Trails Committee sees this as a first and necessary step to move forward into the process of developing it into a more public area, which includes the city park.
Okay.
But no, this request is simply to alter the fence so that we can have secure access as the public.
Okay.
Which is a city property, and there's two pieces here. The map doesn't properly show it, but the very north tip of the park there, or sorry, of the property is a county-owned piece, which is formerly called Sackett Park. So we've been informally referring to the entire area as Sackett Park. The bottom majority of it is city.
Okay. So we've had some just general discussions as a commission. I think we all live here for the recreational opportunities and the big draws, and we all enjoy getting outside. But it's coming to a level that we have discussed as a commission, never making a formal decision one way or the other, but how to financially maintain the continuation of additional space when currently what we're being told during budget time is, well, we have difficulty paying for weed, we have difficulty paying for maintaining the trails, etc. So I'm wondering, is that information getting disseminated to your committee, and do you take that into account when you have your discussions on making recommendations? And do you, I don't see a recommendation, I realize this is not creating the park, but in the future, will you be providing solutions to help the city with the financial maintenance of additional green space in our communities?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions there, and I'll take the first one. We absolutely do consider the financial toll that some of these new parks and existing parks and trails do take on the city. We are continually talking about different and innovative ways that we might be able to provide funding to our parks and trail system. I think if you would ask the majority, well, we did ask the city through a poll in 2007. The overwhelming response from the public was that these systems, these trail systems in the parks are incredible value to our city. So yes, we are absolutely talking. Shannon Holmes is a frequent visitor to our meetings and is constantly updating us on the strain that they face as we continue to propose increased trails and parks. Your question is how we are going to come up with creative ways to find financing for some.
Well, just what are the discussions you engage in? I think it's just it's difficult to in any facet of an entity or a person's life, if you can't afford to maintain what you have, sometimes maybe it doesn't make sense to add if you can't maintain it. So I think it's, again, we've never taken a formal action as a commission. It's just been some information we've discussed. But I know with our budgets that come up each year, it's a topic of discussion on, and obviously we did our new goal setting as well. And, prioritizing our funding, not dismissing the value of the trails and the parks. I think everyone realizes that, but there really has to be a funding mechanism to keep them maintained, because it doesn't help the community to have unmaintained grounds.
I agree. I think as Livingston grows, I might be distorting the numbers a little bit, but we're looking at an additional 10,000 residents over the next 20 to 30 years. You guys probably know that statistic better than I do. But our population is absolutely growing, and one indicator of a quality city is the investment that city makes in its parks and trails systems. And so we as a committee delighted to continue to work with the commission and find ways that we can continue to fund these areas. We understand the situation out there in their tax base and our budget, which is the reality. That being said, we're a group of hard charging and innovative people who want to see this kind of stuff happen. Specifically this area, I think we'll have limited, as compared to say Sacagawea Park, draining of our resources. We intend to keep it mostly a natural habitat, and as well as river access. And so, although there will be some resources that will be in from the budget, we don't see it as a country on the limited budget that our main department does actually.
Mr. Curtis, could we have the, maybe I know you're going to provide a recommendation, but I would just be curious to know what it does take to maintain, if we have a running number of it takes X amount per mile of trail, et cetera, and maybe that information being shared with the Parks and Trails so they have a more concrete, definitive idea of the impact to the budget when we do, and assess both in the green space area. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Commissioner Sandberg, I think one of the creative and innovative ways that we found to try to provide some public access into this gem public property for the residents of Livingston is through the current construction of the water treatment facility. So, from my understanding, and I'm much less of an expert on this than anything else, is that there is potential dollars available that would disappear and go back either to the state or to feds that would allow us to use those funds to create the green integrated fence.
Mr. Curtis will explain those to us, but and I also know as a committee that you, your committee is donates a huge amount of donated time to help with the trail system as well. And I just want to know that I do recognize that and appreciate it. You guys work very hard, so I do appreciate that, which does, ultimately help our budget. So thank you.
I do have one thing to add to what Gavin was saying. I think the difference between our other parks or dream parks or areas and this one is this being more of a wild lands kind of area where it's natural habitat. Potentially outhouse or some benches, but there's already trails within it, various things. So very low on the list of costs overall compared to other parks. Do you have anything to add?
I do actually. So thanks, Gavin. That was great. You did a really great job of summing this up. This actually arose out of the Parks and Trails committee meeting that I attended. They're very interested in access to this park. Currently, the wastewater treatment plant has a 3-sided fence, that's what we used to call an invitation. So it is unsecured on the eastern side at any point. So this does actually address 2 items, which is nice. It addresses both access for the public to a possible future park, and it addresses some of the security issues that I think still exist around the wastewater treatment plant as it currently is. While the picture's not great, there is a county road that comes directly into the north side of the transfer station. There's already a gate there, there's a fence there, so that is an access point from a public road. Unfortunately, the roads in the area that go off to the east into where the county Sackett Park is, there's currently a lot of legal issues with that area. Easements, right of ways. I don't expect that to be available in the near future. Simply by moving the current fence 15 feet in and allowing an area that could be turned into a lane to a small parking area in the northeast side would allow future access when it was developed. There would be no access currently. It would still be city property. It would still be trespassing if people were out there technically. It's not going to be developed with a road or a parking lot at this time. But it does give the option in the future if we can figure out a way to fund it to allow access. More importantly to me is the security aspect of it, which I do appreciate. There obviously is, well, I don't think there's a huge threat from the river of people coming up. There is a transient community that lives out there. We are spending quite a bit of money on of a water reclamation facility, and I would prefer that it was completely fenced. The funding mechanism in this case would be a change order to the current contract. It wouldn't be a new contract, it would be a new contractor. Most likely what would happen is we would submit a change order to the contract management or the construction management team. They would talk to the contractor, almost assuredly sublet it to a fencing contractor. They would install the fence in conjunction with the current construction, and that cost would come out of our current contingency. I think we are currently, with all projected contingency items, sitting at about $600,000 remaining in the contingency fund at this time. A super rough estimate, the Public Works was kind enough to estimate for us somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000 to fence the remaining part. Mostly because we also have to figure out a way to fence the effluent discharge. It isn't good to leave a hole in your fence when it's discharging to the river. So we'd actually cut access there so that from the where the effluent discharges in the Yellowstone to the railway would be separated from the rest of the park. So the only access would be from the south, from the north. We'd have to go around to the north side to get in, which is a pretty good configuration for us. It keeps people from tramping across where the effluent is actually going out in the Yellowstone. Keeps that safe, make sure it doesn't get contaminated, also make sure it doesn't collapse the bank or whatever else is out there, break the pipe. So that would provide security in that manner. So tonight, all that's being asked is for basically the commission to say, yes, we would like you to investigate that process. We're not asking for a change order tonight, we're not asking for any money tonight. It was just for you to direct me to go to the company and say, okay, if we added this as a change order, what's an estimated cost? Where are we in contingency? What does that funding look like? A lot of the contingency was the USDA grant, and if that is not used, we'll go back to the USDA. That's in general. They're trying to help us out a little bit, but in general, the grant money is the last money used from the project. So if it's not used, it goes back to the agency, which in this case is USDA Global. So
So on that, do we have documentation that states that with USDA, that they're the last funding source?
Yep, that is, and that's how they've set it up through that. If you look through that spreadsheet that we gave you, that grant money is last.
Right. But can you provide if it passes and you come back with a bid, can you provide us with that language as well?
Sure,
that states that.
Sure, it's just and I'll bring it back to you, but it is that spreadsheet that USDA and TCEP and SRF, that funding, that is the funding that we're in. So I can definitely give that back to you.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like this should have been part of the whole construction project.
I would have loved for it to be. I don't know, everyone assumed that the security that was there was valid. I'm probably a little more paranoid than most when it comes to security, just from some of the places I've been. So I would say that this would be a good addition for both the water reclamation facility, which I would love, and it also would provide at least the opportunity for future access, which I think is a great thing for everyone as well.
And it falls within the criteria of the project that we wouldn't have to resubmit to anyone.
No, we would put
a change of
scope.
Thank you.
It would have to go to USDA. Steve Trumbull would have to look at it and say, yes, I agree, that falls within the scope of what you're doing. So as long as he would sign off on it, it would be approved at that point.
Okay. Is it possible that if this were to come back, you would have all that at the time, or is this going to be a staged process?
Well, it'll probably be a staged process, but we'll definitely get you at least an initial quote, and we'll talk to USDA and say, hey, is this something you would even consider? We have a real good relationship with Steve Trundle, and he is very responsive when we ask him some questions. So I think we should have it.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it up to the public for public comments. And if anyone has a question of Gavin or another member of the Parks and Trails, you're welcome to ask them.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Or Steve? Any commissioner comments or questions? Warren?
Well, part of the, what might be factored in is the fact that a lot of the proposed development of the city is up in the north side in the area of the proposed park as far as usage goes.
Any other commission comments, questions? So do we have a motion from the commission on action item 8? Or request?
I'll make a motion to approve action item A.
Second.
So we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Do you want to clarify the motion, the request to the city manager as well? Or do you have one?
Because it doesn't seem like the agenda item really outlines what we're asking.
Yeah.
I think maybe a motion would be a motion to direct the city manager to investigate the possibility of using construction funds for the fence reconfiguration.
The cost of the change order.
Yeah, because it becomes more of a security thing on it. Parks and trails per se, because we're not developing the area. So I'd like to make a motion on action item A to direct the city management to get a quote on securing the wastewater treatment plant fencing. And as part of the scope of the project of reclamation zone.
So we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Feldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
For.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg, Commissioner Mayne.
Or
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is to discuss, approve, deny request for parking restrictions from Dr. Jeffrey Dickerson's Livingston Veterinary Hospital. Mr. Curtis.
thank you, Manager. I think we have a representative who'd like to hear from you first.
Please. Come on up.
Good evening, my name is Gabriel Nicholson. I'm representing the Livingston Veterinary Hospital. We had put in a request to free up some parking spaces for our business located at Park and L Street. And we had written a letter to the city explaining that there's not much turnover some days in those parking spots that are adjacent to our building, which does not allow our customers to find a place to park and to access the business. We've also requested a loading and an unloading zone near our front door so that pet owners can drop off pets or, in the case of an emergency, access the hospital quickly.
Let's start with questions from the commissioner to Ayla on this thing. The request, I should say.
Loading zone, is that on L Street?
It would be on L Street on the east side, there, right near the front door.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Would be the first.
yeah, right by the stop sign.
Right, yeah, that would be the designated loading zone.
Correct, yeah.
And then the other would be too long. Yeah, I just wanted that.
Okay, clarification as well. So you do have quite a few parking spots on Park, right?
There are three on Park, depending on the size of the vehicle. Totally get it. Works there.
Okay, so you have 3 there, and then, so with the request on L, are you, okay, I just wasn't clear in reading it, and I could have not read it correctly. The loading zone next to the stop sign, and then are you requesting 2 hour to the alley or for all of L, that whole block of L?
Just that side of the street, I think, is what we're,
So just the east side of L on that block, okay. And,
It's to the
oh, just to the alley, not the whole block, okay. I'm just trying to think what else, and so, just because I didn't go down and drive by, so I apologize, so your front door is on L and not on Park?
it's on the corner. There's 2
Okay.
accesses, so you can get in that. I mean, technically, one faces Park Street and one door faces.
Okay, so it's right on the corner, right? Okay, thank you for the visual. Great, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and the other question about the parking spots in the front of the building, you know, we purchased the building in '93, and I don't know how many layers have been added to that street over time. So, the parking spots actually have quite a pitch to them, and the water has to be diverted again away from the building in order for it not to run into the building. So over time, that's become more and more challenging for folks to back in and out, especially with all the traffic on Park Street, especially during the summer months. So that would be, I think, maybe a safety issue improvement as well.
And then, just because I know you have a little bit of parking in the back for like a horse stall or something like
That's large animal.
Okay.
There, and we do ask our employees to park there, not on the street. I myself park down the block in order to allow customer access.
Thank you.
So I have a question. By looking at the Google Earth map of the area, there's also parking on so if you're looking at the building on the left side, quite a few spaces. Is that not part of the property?
Those spaces belong to John Deere, so we don't have access. The addition or that east side of the property actually is right on the property line with John Deere, and they are really not in favor of us parking there or our clients parking there. So, and yes, you know, once in a while that happens, but it's not available to us. Yeah.
Any other questions from the commission?
Were you gonna say something?
I already spoke. Thank you.
I was gonna say. Yeah, I'd like to encourage business down at that end of town anyway. Anything we can do to help make it more viable. I can see that. And then in the front of the building, unless you have a monster truck and try backing on a park, it's scary. Because I've done there, you know, I might be with before, and it's not pleasant, and trying to find place, you know, on L Street as well. I'm taking my car in for numerous repairs over there as well. So that's all I have to say.
I took a very unscientific trip down L Street this afternoon, and for the first block, there was no parking on either side. It was all parked up.
And I will tell you that most of those vehicles are not our customers. And some of them have been parked there for a couple of days.
Are we into the commission discussion now, or where are we on the discussion? Oh, okay. So, I guess my question, you know, I can understand Gayla's concern, but, you know, we did receive from a community member an opinion on this as well. But I think it's a valid opinion that if we change it to 2-hour parking, you know, we don't enforce so many codes already in town. You know, again, I watched the street sweeper come through yesterday and not ticket the cars parked on the street. You know, people are on my block. You know, we're not monitoring. Again, it just comes back to, we're not monitoring the ordinances we have on the books. And so I have difficulty adding more when I know exactly that they are not going to get enforced. I think Gayla, you know, the loading zone is a different issue. I don't know if people respect that more or not. You know, I don't know. But again, who's going to monitor that and enforce it? I know that the owners of the business, I'm sure, will try and monitor and make phone calls, but I've heard from community members that they make phone calls all the time and it's still not addressed. So one of the issues that Mr. Dickerson had stated in regards to vehicles being parked for a long amount of time, you know, there's a prime example right there. We have an ordinance that trailers aren't supposed to be parked more than 5 days. And so that's what sounds like is happening down there. So that's not being enforced. So the thought of adding another area
to take care of a situation that I think might be mitigated if we actually enforced the ordinances we currently have, is where I'm struggling. And I guess personally I'm not struggling. I can't support adding more ordinances and more restricted parking timeframes when we are not enforcing the population that we already have. It makes no sense to me. With all due respect.
Thank you. No, you want to say anything? I have a couple different issues and concerns as well. Firstly, I think that we're moving towards ordinance enforcement that in a way that it's a long time coming, but we do have a new officer in that role, won't be fully implemented until July, is that correct? So I'm looking forward to that, July or so, because I think that will help our community in general with our ordinance enforcement. I think a second issue is that we have been discussing having coalition that relates to our parking in downtown, which I think this should be addressed as those side streets off of Park and those businesses being considered in that coalition's discussion and work. Because I think then we'd have a better answer. My third concern, and Sarah, you said it, is the adding it to what's not already, we're not able to enforce at this time, and adding just a little section in addition to that of just, 2-hour parking kind of gives us that piecemeal deal situation where we're trying to deal with little parts and pieces instead of the whole. And then we're going to have to add multiple places across anywhere that people request because there's never parking next to park, and how do we enforce it? And then it's just opening a can of worms. So the last part is I asked Mr. Cardew, so maybe you can address this on loading zones and what is a common approach in our city of loading zones, because I see that as the thing that I like to see help different businesses in these areas, because then they're quick and people are, even if it's an animal, if it's the boxes or whatever. So do you have any feedback on the loading zones?
Do you want me to give the entire recommendation at this point, or just address that?
Anyone else have questions?
So I think you've done an excellent job of breaking it down into the two issues. It's 2-hour parking versus loading zone, and those are two very separate issues. I think the loading zone in this case makes a lot of sense. Just like any other place, obviously animals are difficult depending on it's not guinea pig. Getting it in and out of your car and into the office is more difficult. The configuration you're talking about, the 3 or 4, depending on how you count it up front, don't have sidewalk access directly into it. You actually have to go out around to the sidewalk and come back in. So a loading zone on L Street makes the most sense. Just back from the sidewalk. It's not painted back right now to 25 feet, so we have to look at how far back it needs to be from the stop sign. But I think the first available parking space on the east side of L Street would give people a easy place to load and unload, and it would put them right at the end of the sidewalk to go directly into the clinic. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So I would be supportive of that. That's very similar to how we use loading zones around the rest of the city. Again, it depends on the business. Obviously, if you're, a bar, you don't need a loading zone. Well, in that case, the loading zone outside. But in this case, this is something where people absolutely need, be able to park, get a large animal out and into that. So I'd be supportive of that. The 2-hour parking, and you brought up some of the issues, becomes problematic on a few fronts. One is enforcement. Right now, all of our 2-hour parking is in downtown and it's core. This would be the first time we had a 2-hour parking zone that was for a single business. Right now, it's multiple.
What about Kenyon Noble?
Is there a 2-hour parking zone?
There's a parking restriction in front of Kenyon Noble.
There's a parking restriction. I don't think it's a 2-hour parking.
It's a green, I don't know if it's a 1 or a 2, it's a green and white sign.
We can check it out. I don't know, does anybody off the top of their head know what's a Kenyon Noble? I think it's also a loading zone for their semi, but I would have to check it.
Never enough, I don't remember.
So The downtown business area is easier to enforce. Obviously, when you get a complaint call, 2-hour parking is harder to enforce because unless you've marked the car, unless an officer has done it, you can't take someone's word that it's been parked there for 2 hours. Loading zone's a lot easier. If they're parked in the loading zone and they're not loading or unloading, then that's can be a ticket. I think with the addition of the code enforcement officer, once we get the new officer online, so we can look at that full time. With a loading zone, I would like to see what it does if it frees up some of the parking. Additionally, depending on how Neptune's moving downtown affects some of the parking there, that might also relieve some of the stress.
Neptune's is usually not the issue because those folks that typically get busy at 4 o'clock. It's vehicles that are due to be repaired at the shop next door that sit for days waiting for service.
So I guess the question on that is if they're serviceable. If they're not, sadly, I'm not a code guy, so hopefully it would be someone, if they're not drivable, they can't be parked on the street. So that's something we can enforce differently. Because that is one of our current codes. If the vehicle is not drivable, it shouldn't be parked on the street. So we can look at enforcing that versus a time limit, which I think would be much easier because that just means it can't be there, not that it can only be there for 5 days. And so that could be a different way to look at it. So I think maybe if we took a couple different approaches, we could see if it works, and if that doesn't give relief, then maybe we could come back and look at this again. But I think originally I would recommend against 2-hour parking. I recommend for the loading zone, and then see if we can attack it a different way and try and keep the 2-hour parking just for enforcement. It's much easier for an officer to be able to stay in one area and mark cars, and then be able to come back instead of having to go to different areas and mark all the cars and then come back. Just as far as economy of time goes. So that would be my recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Quick question. Oh, sorry. So just as we look at, we can look at the moment, we can look at the future and expansion. So loading zones, takeaway parking. So, I'm trying to, we can look at what this, the demographics currently, but, what will it look like in 10 or 15 years? It's hard to take it back. So I'm just, when we just finished having a discussion on parking and the lack thereof, the more loading zones we add, the more parking we take away. So I've struggled with that a little bit. And I guess I'm just asking, what are your thoughts?
So looking at that, I would say in this case, because of the location, obviously downtown, I would not be as supportive of loading zones because that's multi-business parking spaces for multi-blocks. This is a very specific area. I think we have a loading and unloading zone for the senior center and there. So there are certain exceptions to that. I think in this case, the loss of one parking space balanced against the use of the business for that parking space is one that comes out in favor of the business in this case. Again, it's a case by case on all of them.
So what would we look at in the future? Again, just setting precedent of if we were to have future requests, then how would we delineate what's a valid, well, you gave so-and-so a loading zone, I want a loading zone, and then, all of a sudden, if we have 15 businesses on the east side of town with loading zones, we have no parking. So just trying to understand, looking at a future perspective, what that may look like.
Sure, I think you look at businesses on that street, how many, in this case, I think that clinic is the only business on that side of the street.
And I guess I'm just thinking because businesses change.
Sure.
So I've seen in the close to 50 years I've lived here, a big change of the types of businesses. So we can't just assess the type of businesses that are there now or what's going to be in the future. They could change drastically.
And I think if the businesses change, the parking space doesn't necessarily go.
That's okay. That would be clarification that you could how do you take away a loading zone?
It would be the same as we do currently for handicap spots in front of houses. When the resident moves, that parking spot is assigned to the resident, not the house. We could assign the parking spot to the business, not the location, not the building.
Okay.
I don't know how it's currently done. I'd have to get with Jim and talk through the minutia of that. But that would be my vision, is we would assign it to the type of business. Because if the vet clinic moved out and a you know, I don't know, macrame rug place moved in, I don't think they would leave alone, so.
It's a lot of yarn, they may. But I'm just trying to not just live in the moment, but just
Sure.
be
No, I think
proactive
that's
and
great.
look at the future and, how these things can be changed, what that process is. So we're just all clear of the decision that we're making.
I think you would look at, so you look at the type of business, and obviously if the business changed, you would, just like if the bar moves out, the next resident business owner will get a license.
No, but a loading zone is the city, so I didn't know what the city's protocol was to erase a loading zone and what that process entails.
I'm not sure we've ever done it. I'm not sure if anyone that's ever had one has moved. But that's absolutely something we can look at. And that's something I think that's easily addressed once we kind of, I would say modernize, but automate some of our processes. That'll be something we can look at. If there's a new owner, what already has been done for that location and that owner.
Sure.
We already do it for the handicap parking spaces, so I think a very similar process would work well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, so if a loading zone is put in, how long would you think that it would be reasonable to monitor it and see if it's effective or not?
I would say, especially through at least the summer months, it would give you a really good idea. I mean, once we hit fall or winter, we're going to be through a cycle. I don't think the parking's probably not as much of an issue in the fall and winter.
It just depends on if a trailer is parked there and the workload of the neighboring business, so it does vary.
And again, that's the harder thing to enforce because we do have 5 days, which I'm sure seems an eternity when it's parked next 2 days.
True.
So that one's harder to enforce, and I'm not sure, unless we change the actual ordinance dealing with trailers, there's not a lot that can be done about that.
And so and then you also talked about that the yellow marking isn't perhaps not code at this point.
I don't think I don't know, is it there right now, Shannon? Do you know if you're paying that back?
There's a little bit there. It's not the way it should be.
There's still a lot that we need to work on in the city as far as that goes. But if we're going to paint the loading zone, that'd probably be a good time to look at it and make sure that it's all done at the same time.
And how long would it take the city to get to something like that?
Probably not a long time, a couple weeks once it was passed. Is that pretty good schedule, Jim?
Yep.
Yeah. Again, we do a lot of painting, so once it was passed and approved, once we got through the paperwork, it's going to
Any other questions?
Thanks for your time.
So do I have a motion from the commission regarding
I'll make a motion to approve action item B for the loading zone only.
Do you have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion from the commission to approve loading zone only request. Do I have, and I have a second. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett. Let me get started.
Right, I've been saying good morning.
I have a lot more here.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Friedman,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg,
4.
Commissioner Maybe.
4.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is to discuss, approve, deny Chamber of Commerce request for assistance in funding production of signs for damaged Lucent Park trail signs. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you can be happy.
Sorry. Excuse me, my attire, I just got back from the Zoological conference. So there were 3 letters when this was originally turned in, and I'm not sure if you have the correct one. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna give it to you. There's been a recent change. As of yesterday, again, I just got back, so I do not know if it was approved, the grant was approved. I did hear that it looked like it was. And so this comes out a little confusing. So first of all, what these are for is the 12 signs that we currently have. That is the Livingston Clark Trail signs to Park County. They start from Bozeman and they go all the way over to the Old Convict Grade Road. And 2 of our signs were damaged. And why it was such a rush to come in front of you today was simply a timeline. And I'm here representing not only the Chamber of Commerce, but we work in partnership with the Yellowstone Gateway Museum and the Livingston Parks and Trails Committee, which I have been attending their meetings because we all pretty much, share quite a few things between also businesses as well as the visitor aspect. So when it comes to these 2 particular signs that were damaged, one is at Highway 10 right there by the truck stop. And it was mowed over and disappeared somewhere along through the winter. And there was another one that is out by the reclamation center, I guess is a good way of putting it, out by the sewage treatment. And it was damaged, knocked into and damaged. We need, the signs are metal, the bases, and then the sign goes on top of it. So there are 2 signs. Through the cost of the signs, Parks Ready filled out a grant to be able to get at least $2,000 to help us pay for the signs. The total base of the sign is $25.59 to replace the 2 signs. So with the grant, it would simply be, with the grant, it would be $828 times 2 because we're going to ask the county to pay for the other half. So what we're here tonight is asking for the $828, half from the city to help us replace the signs, and that is if we get the grant. But right now, as I said, as the email yesterday, it looked that we did get the grant. They just haven't given us the approval letter for it, as far as I understand. That's correct? Yes. And again, back to the original comment was the reason why we're coming in front of you today is that July 22nd through July 28th is the National Park Lewis and Clark Trail celebration. It's the 50th anniversary. We're trying to have these completed and in place by that historic week. This is a very important week here in Livingston. We do have a few things that we're looking at celebrating, a couple contests in town to get our locals to go out. There's like these selfie spots, and you go and take a selfie and you see these little signs that say selfie spot. We are also adding one extra sign up at the Yellowstone Gateway Museum. Actually, the chamber donated, well, didn't give, but we loaned 3 of our massive signs, the ones that sit up on the Bozeman Trail, so that they can also be included. So there'll be a total of 13 sign locations. And this is something that's great for not only our community, encouraging our general public, the children, families to go out and visit these signs, as well as travelers and tourists that will be in the area. As it stands now, we get a couple hundred tourists a year annually to go out, and they currently look for these signs. So the other portion of this is that the chamber is working with national parks. There's a gal there that is going to be helping us, Lindsay Hatcher, actually reproduce between this and Steph Martin's, reproduce this driving map. And we're going to get that all done by July 22nd. So it's very important for us to be able to get this partial funding so that we can get the signs ordered. So tonight we're in front of you, and on Thursday we'll go in front of the county commissioners, and then we can make that phone call and say make them. So that's pretty much the short and skinny of this.
Question on yes, for clarification. Please. I recall when you presented the other night to the Parks and Trails that we're actually moving the signs.
Oh, 2 of them.
Right. And so the one by the truck stop won't exist there any longer. That will be somewhere else. Is that correct?
No, that's the one they want to put back up right there. But the thing is I was out there the other day looking, and there were these like massive semis parked right where the sign is. You know where that Parkway Motel sign is? That was also knocked down, and they put that back up. It sat right next to it. So maybe 20 feet to the left or the right. Right there, just so that it doesn't get knocked over. And apparently what it looked like to me is it just kind of got plowed over in that big snowstorm when all the semis were. And the other sign, we'd like to move across over to the Myers Trail, that parking lot area where the birding trail is.
It won't be at the.
No, it'll be across the street, the other side of the bridge, safer.
Any other questions, comments? Sarah?
What was the original funding mechanism of these signs from the get-go?
So from the original, it was it's a grant. Basically, there is no funds currently as we speak. So
How was it originally funded? How were the signs put in place to start with?
originally, well, that's a long time ago, between the chamber and I believe National Park Services helped us with some of the funding, and yeah, there was a grant. There was a grant that was originally this was like 12 years ago. Yeah, quite a long time ago.
And I believe the in-kind services for some of the just placement of them in the public spaces. Is that correct?
Yes. And all of these are like a driving trail, so it's accessible by your vehicle to just pull over and go visit.
And so I guess if there's no funding mechanism. I mean, the chamber doesn't look at maintaining repairs and maintenance to existing signage. We know it's going to deteriorate over time.
Yes,
it just seems that there's been a lot of requests recently coming in from the chamber. And I know the chamber has its membership, it has grants, the city businesses contribute. And I'm just trying to understand the role of the city commission in funding projects of the chamber. I mean, I realize that we're all working together, but we all have adopted our budgets, and we didn't have this in our budget. And we already had another request for downtown businesses signs that was not in our budget that we approved earlier. So, you know, the chamber hadn't budgeted for it, we didn't budget for it, and I'm just trying to understand where the best funding mechanism for this replacement should come from. And why it's coming to the city.
Well, there is construction that is taking place up on the particular street where the one sign was damaged and mowed over. And so first of all, we need to replace it. It's on a historic trail system, and we just simply would like to be replaced. There is a grant that was written, again, by Parks Brady. You know, the reason why the chamber's involved is because we were involved in the original, we were supposed to have the signs. There were a second set of signs and they simply have disappeared somewhere in the city. We don't know if it's in the city building, a county building. We checked the museum, we checked the chamber. The other 12 signs are gone and nobody knows where they are. So we've had to replace these two signs. And, you know, we are a nonprofit, we are a membership-based business, and we are supportive services for things like our trails, parks and trail systems. You see a lot of me, Sarah, because I support our local community in many different facets. And this is just something that we currently, the chamber has one sign. We are partial owner with these signs. So that is why I'm up here in front of you. And it's not for the entire grant, it's simply just for a portion of it so that we can get these two signs replaced. And plopped in the ground. Apparently, Shannon is aware of, and it's okay that the two locations have been picked for the signs.
Yes, and the city's offered to do the installation for free.
Yeah, I just think, you know, the in-kind is, I mean, those are funds right there with helping with that. So again, I'm just struggling with these dollar requests for materials. You know, we do work in concert and together and support each other, but you know, the chamber is, as you said, a nonprofit separate entity, and if they're actually the owners of these signs, I'm just not sure it's the role of the city to help fund to replace them. Thanks.
I have a math question.
Yeah,
Math question.
I just figured it out.
So
yeah,
It's 828 times 2 plus the 903 gives you the 2559 because it's 8.
That's how you get to the 2,559. I'm assuming if they get the $2,000 grant, it's 559, but we don't have explained to us how that would be broken out between the county and the city. That's so maybe you want to answer that question.
Right, so actually, National Park Services, there's a gal that works there, and Lindy Hatcher, was able to find the original, there was a company that was gonna charge us the $2,500 total. And Lindy Hatcher actually found these, replicas, something that they could digitalize so that we can make them for less money, which is how we ended up coming down to the $828. And so it reduced it by the $900. The total amount is $2,559, less the 903, and then we just split it in half. That's how we came to that total. Or
What if you get the grant?
if we get the grant, I mean, the grant, that would take us down to, that was the other paper here.
You might have an actual net profit.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We got
$279.50. No, each.
So if it's 2,559 and you get a 2,000 grant, that's only $559 left.
Right, so. split that
And then
in half.
minus the 903, you're net ahead. If I'm doing the math correctly.
So the problem is the real number.
But if you do, there is no request for funding.
Absolutely,
Absolutely, yes or no?
absolutely, yes. We don't need the funding if, we get the grant, if we don't get the grant. So that's why I said it was a little confusing. That's why there were 3 different versions of this letter. If we got the grant, if we didn't. And it was just recently, last Thursday, we found out that Lindsay was able to have the file that we can actually produce the signs without going through this expensive company. So, you know, again, I just got back in town right before this meeting, and tomorrow I will find Parks, and we can see if for sure they let us know that we got it. Then I simply do not need the funding. If not, then you know, then we need the $828 or the $1,600 to be able to come up with it. So we're just really concerned that, you know, here we have the parade with the theme. It's the 50th anniversary. We have 10 out of 12 signs because 2 signs were damaged. And, you know, we're going to do this respectfully without, you know, kind of trying to figure out who actually ran them over during construction and mowing of snow. But, you know, we just want to get them fixed in time for the celebration on July 22nd.
Yeah, Mike, do you have any?
Yeah, I just want to clarify so that they can, I think, cut it down. With the files that we know we now have, the total cost is $1,656.
Yeah,
That's our total cost.
That's correct.
If we don't find out about the grant soon enough, then we'll use the city and the county money, assuming they approve it during their meeting, to pay for it. But then if the grant is received afterwards, then the city and the county will be refunded that money, correct?
Absolutely.
So the only real question is, the risk is if the grant doesn't get approved. I know I talked to Parks late today and they still haven't come back. I think it still needs to go in front of their board for a final vote. If the grant gets approved, it's no cost to the city or the county. So I would look at it from the commission's perspective, assuming the grant will not get approved, are you willing to spend $828 for half of the production of the seats?
Where would that unbudgeted expense come from?
It's going to come from either the overage or the reserve, depending on how we come out of the year.
How much did we pay with the downtown signs?
$279. By the way, which are working wonderfully.
I do see with the sign being added to Myers Trail, that being city property. And that is something, you know, if we have to replace signs or add signs to any of our parks, it's a little easier to sell that concept. Where, you know, the one at the truck stop that was knocked over by a semi probably, or a who knows what, you know, but I do see it as a responsibility for us to have signage for these awesome places and our history within our parks and within our community. So, just my thoughts on
Can I ask a clarification? How is it, when you stated it's our responsibility, how is it our responsibility?
just we are a community with a vision as far as what we do and what we think and who we are. And our parks and our outdoor activities are very, and our history are very important to us.
I guess the sign isn't there now. They're moving it, they're requesting to move it to city property, and I guess I could say it would be a nice addition, but I would disagree with the term. It's our responsibility to have it.
Well, it was on the city property. One of them was on at the reclamation center, and that one's moving to the park. So it's moving from one city property to the other. So. Any other comments?
Yeah, in 2005, when this was originally done, the Clark's Trail, this part which goes through Park County, this of course this trail you guys know goes, historic trail goes all over the Montana as well as the United States, from Illinois over here, Indiana. So I'm gonna butcher that. But you know, this is tied into the Sacagawea Park, the statue that's down there. It was a big, you know, fundraising effort which helped put up the signs in the first place, and the city was definitely a part of that as well. And being that this is a national historic trail, just happens to be there in our community. So just making it, you know, replacing two lost damaged signs. But definitely, if the grant comes in, we will definitely just write to you and check that.
Yeah. We have not been to public comment yet. Do you have any public comment on action item C?
On behalf of the Parks and Trails Committee, we will endorse and support these signs and benefit that it adds to our community, especially the 50th anniversary of Parks and Trails.
Kate Murray, also on Parks and Trails, for my sign. And it's our understanding that that second sign that was out at the truck stop is being moved into town, and would be being placed on that little triangular Bozeman Park, which is sort of not a park, but it's where the John Bozeman sign used to be. So it will be coming into town. Also,
Any other public comment? So do we have a motion from the commission on action item C? The chamber's request for assistance in funding the collection of signs for the damaged trail signs.
I make a motion that we approve the Chamber of Commerce request for assistance in funding the production center for the Lewis and Clark Trail sign.
Do we have a number on that? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion by Friedman and a second by Nugent. Any last discussion items or issues? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
For.
Commissioner Friedman.
For.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Against.
Commissioner Maybe.
For.
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is a fee waiver request from the Chamber of Commerce for the 92nd annual parade. Leslie.
Hello. Okay, annually I come up here in front of you and, obviously this year, 92nd annual parade, we are working with, Lisa and, leadership committee, to pound out the actual, parade route. We have a plan A and a plan B is where we pretty much stand at this point. Let's see, normally we, in the previous, before 3 years, there were actually no fees. And we understand that having fees, especially when you land on the weekends and things like that. So we've always been gracious in working with the city. Darrell been a part of a few of these conversations in the past. So this year, again, it would be another 24 cans. We did the count. So instead of the traditional $8 per can, which is the standard rate for the city of Livingston, we request the $4 per can as the previous years. And also the street closure fee at $400 is also the street closure fee is the other thing that we asked for a reduction in, and to half of that amount. And the last thing is that the street sweeper. So the street sweeper, which is like the last thing that goes down the parade route, actually gets applauded and people like. I might even have a secondary option, CUP, who is going to be in our parade because they're very excited about it, said that they have a street sweeper. So we might be able to save some money on the street sweeper. If they can find it, they said. They don't know which job site it's on. So we might be able to save money there. But I'm actually just basically asking for a reduction. The new rate would be to 96. Actually, I don't know how much it costs for a street sweeper, so we were just asking for that fee to be waived as usual. Oh, and I'm so sorry. And also for the city to approve that and basically support us in the no candy throwing from the parade route. Also the ordinance about not putting out the chairs before 6 a.m. and not blocking the business storefronts for people to be, because it's a Monday, so everybody's going to still be open for business, including our banks. So it's just about the message we're going to get out into the paper. But knowing that we have, and I have talked with police chief to also recommend that we get supported with that as usual. We told him he could take the chairs.
I have a quick question before we start. When I was doing the math, it was different, so I want to make sure. So normally the fee is $6.92 would be a normal fee for 24 cans, 400 for the street closure, and then 100 for the street sweeper. Correct?
That's correct.
So are we going half of that? Or are we?
Oh, for the garbage cans. Yeah, we normally ask for, that was one of the things that Shannon brought up a couple of years ago, is we get at least paid for half, and that was not a problem.
So, your request is for $2.96 because you don't want the street sweeper fee at all. You want that?
That's correct. We're actually not even sure. This was the first year that we were looking at a street sweeper fee. And because it's always been in the parade, that's the last thing in the parade, like in the parade route. And nobody moves till it goes down the street. But I understand there's new fee schedules and whatnot. So if I can save by using COP, that'd be better. They won't cost you anything. I can get them to find theirs.
I guess I have a quick question. Are there plans this year with volunteers? I know with the Hoot, even though we don't have it this year, but there's a big group of people who volunteer for cleanup. Is that part of the chamber's work at the end of the parade as well, just for cleanup and helping?
It's just general people in the community, like Randy and his wife from the LBID usually come down, and they're all about. They already take care of the city garbage cans, the ones in downtown, and so they do a lot of that. Terry Chambers, I'm sorry, and her husband, and they usually stay out pretty late. And we take down signs and banners and all the string ribbon things and everything. Everybody kind of chips in. I mean, the street sweeper, the only thing it really does is clean up the horse poop.
That's a lot.
Pardon?
Yeah, that's a lot. Not just all it does. It's a lot. Any other questions from the commission? So, is there a recommendation?
So this is obviously a long-standing tradition. The city waives fees for the parade. I would agree with that. I think it's good to get these numbers in front of you so that you can see what the cost usually would be, so you understand the finances. In this case, it's not a direct cost to the city as far as money goes. It's just time and labor. This year it's not as bad because the parade won't fall on the weekend. So we're not paying time and a half or double time for the guys that are out there. So $296 I think is a reasonable amount. I think that's fair. We love to support the parade. Everybody loves the parade.
Any questions from the commission? Any public comments? So do we have a motion from the commission to approve action item B?
Make a motion to approve the fee waiver request for the Chamber of Commerce for 92nd annual parade.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Friedman and a second by Murphy. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Holman,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Or.
Commissioner Sandberg, or Commissioner Maybe.
Or
Motion passes. Next.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is action item E to discuss, approve, deny potential financing for property owners for 50% of downtown sidewalk costs. Mr. Carty.
thank you, Madam Chair. So this looks momentous. It's not nearly as momentous as it looks. So this is a standard policy that already exists in the city. It's available to all property owners when their sidewalk is replaced, either involuntarily or as part of an emergency order. They have the ability to ask for funding through the city for the property based on the rates and conditions set aside in ordinance 20 or paragraph 26-115. So we are bringing this to you as an entirety for the entire downtown project and say, are the property owners eligible to use that for the second half of their sidewalk costs? So as it currently stands, URA is planning to fund the first half of the sidewalk costs, so that will not be eligible to be financed through the city. But if the URA money does not go forward, doesn't stretch far enough to cover the entire, be able to finance the remaining 50%. The question before you is, will the property owners have the opportunity to bring that to the city, and then we would finance it? And so a couple of keys is, the reason it's coming before you is because the city commission, paragraph, if in the opinion of the city commission, the payment of the entire cost in 1 year will work an undue hardship on the owner of the property upon which the sidewalk abuts, it shall be optional of the city commission to extend the payment of the cost and penalty over a period of time not to exceed 5 years. So if you approve, they can finance it up to 5 years. It will draw interest from the date of the completion of the improvements and be accepted by the commission at a rate of 6%. So the requirements are they can finance it up to 5 years at a rate of 6%. Currently, I doubt that's competitive in the market, but you never know what the interest rates are going to do. So my guess would be if owners decide to finance it, they would not choose the city because we're not a great financing option. But if they did, at the top, you can see the cost to the city. So the first one, it's a little counterintuitive, but if they chose only to pay 10% of it, is what the 10% column is. So that's the amount that the property owners are paying. For the entire project, the city would have to finance $181,000. That's the most. Obviously, if they chose to fund 0%, then we would be funding $226,752.
So that you're just throwing out scenarios because there's no guarantee what people are going to pay for optional funding.
Absolutely.
If everyone chose to take the stellar rate of 6% from the city, because it's such a heck of a deal, do we have the cash flow to cover that up front? Okay.
Is there anything else?
No, and that's just standard how we do the sidewalks in the residentials as well, right?
Yep, if we went to, and this ordinance is a little more involved, if we actually went to where we went out and looked at the city every year and made a list of properties that we say needed to be replaced, then those properties would have this option to come before you and say, hey, this is too much, we would like you to finance it to our property taxes. And they would have the same option. So this isn't something specific to the downtown, but I thought it would be easier to do the entire downtown at once instead of waiting for individuals to come forward.
Thank you. Well, as someone who has actually paid this for their sidewalks, when we bought our house on Yellowstone, we had just finished them. And we actually had to wait for them to dry before we could move in, and we were offered, actually it was offered to the former owner who accepted this, and then we paid for it. So it was, yeah, it was an easy process for me as a homeowner. That's all I have to say. Anyone else? Comments from the public? Questions? Any other commissioner comments before we have a motion? Do we have a motion on action item E?
I'll make a motion to approve action item E. Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland. I'm so sorry. You don't look anything like
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Commissioner Brady.
4.
Commissioner Sandberg. 4. Commissioner Brady.
4.
Roll call, motion passes. So next on the agenda is to discuss, approve, deny request for final approval for Discovery Vista LLC subdivision. Mr. Cardes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Discovery Vista LLC already came before you for conditional approval, which they received. This is coming back before you because they have met all of the requirements that you placed upon them as a commission for the conditional approval. So this is now coming before you for final approval. We inspected them yesterday, I believe, and they met all the requirements. We do have a certificate of substantial completion. We just got it yesterday, so it's not in the packet, but the 11, which we actually had one, but the 11 requirements have been met by Discovery Vista LLC. And on page 88, we'll show you the area we're talking about, just north of the park they had, so it's just the completion around the corner. So that is before you for final approval.
Do you have any commission questions or comments to Mr. Cardes regarding the final approval of Discovery Vista? Any public comment? We have a
Jay Keeper, 325 South Main, same comment that I made before. Is there a reason why there isn't a name behind Discovery Vista LLC? I read it slowly and I didn't see any personage names associated with the venture.
Sure. We don't provide the names of the corporations, so this is the corporation. Discovery Vista is the one that goes for final approval. It's not an individual, it's the corporation itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a motion from the commission? Sorry, I have a comment. I'm Julie Kennedy, and I'm with ERA Landmark Real Estate here in Livingston. And I'd like to offer up that if Jay or anyone else has any questions regarding Discovery Vista, you're welcome to visit with me. I've been representing them for about 6 years. Thank you, Julie. Now we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve action item F. Second.
So we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Commissioner Friedman.
4.
Commissioner Sandberg. 4. Commissioner Brady.
4.
Motion passes. Next, we have discuss, approve, deny city manager's contract evaluation. So Sarah, you had asked to put this on the agenda. Well, this was like splitting it into two. Do you want to address this first of all, or do you want to in particular start the discussion?
I didn't see the proposal in here again. So to refresh my memory, was it, can you tell us, Mr. Carter, what you're requesting? Because I don't see it in the packet.
It was a 0% base salary increase, a 3% increase in city's contribution to the retirement plan, and 3 additional administrative days.
So on the retirement, my understanding is if they make a contribution to your retirement, then it gets matched when it goes into the retirement through the retirement fund.
Because I'm not since I don't have a guarantee to be a Montana employee for a long time, I'm not in the Montana employee retirement system. I'm in the ICMA retirement system, so the International City Managers Association. So there is no match. It's my salary and the city's match, and that's it.
So what goes in, how does it work now prior to an addition? What goes into retirement? Whatever right now.
The percentages?
Yeah.
Let's see, it is I left my book upstairs. It is a 8%.
8.14, I believe.
I think it is 8.14. It's a weird number, but 8.14% city. And I think it's 7.5% for the individual. Is that right?
7.65.
7.65.
So you're looking at adding more from your paycheck into, and this is the match then?
This would be the city match, yes.
Okay. So the net is the 35 and not would be set. Okay.
Right.
So, and then the 3 personal days. Okay. I think, when I looked at it, I think, Mr. Curtis has been here for a year. We did, provide, I thought, a nice 5,000 addition after the first 6 months, which we have already compensated after that first 6 months. We did have a 10,000 for moving fees. I think, with the 15 working days, and then you have 6 or 7 personal days already. 7. So that's 22 days, which is, 4.5 weeks on top of 11 holidays. And I know that you had made a comment that you were working a lot of hours, and which made me think why you would want more time off. But I think that's a very fair package, what we personally have offered. So at 22 days vacation, and also by adding more personal days, if the vacation days aren't used upon termination, they get paid out. And by having more personal days and those being used first, there's a greater chance of having more of a cumulative vacation, but that is a long-term financial liability for the city upon termination. And I think, again, since it's the first year of the contract, I really think that our salary and compensation package, because we've also added the car allowance that's in there, and 22 days off with 11 holidays, so 33 days. I think we have a very fair package offered, in my opinion. So that's my thoughts on it.
Commissioners, any other comments? Pressure anyone else? I was iffy on the request and the raise at the 6-month mark, and I was one of the only people at that time. I think this request is reasonable in that personal days added in our, I think will compensate for someone who does work beyond a definite 9 to 5 job or 8 to 5 job. So I'm not against, I guess, adding the personal days. Still unsure, I guess, on the adding into the retirement, and I don't know if anyone else has any ideas or thoughts on it. I'd love some feedback from the other commissioners. Thanks.
I don't know anything about formulas for executive compensation, but I think the measure of value is really in what's accomplished. And I think that that's a yardstick that I'm new at this, being inside what's being accomplished. And to me, that's the critical judgment factor. I don't feel that I know enough to make that judgment at this point. Quite honestly, I like the way things are going. And I also would like to be fair. I don't know the numbers, if industry-wise they're fair. I would think that they are. And at this point, I would be in favor of going along with the request and paying very strict attention of the way things are going. And that's not meant as a veiled threat at all. I mean, I think there's so many balls in the air now, and there's so many things happening that it's very critical that A, there be no interruptions, and B, that the job is done efficiently. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. I've been very impressed with the work that's been done to date, especially with the enormous scope of work that's going on in the city right now, and stuff like that. And I'm all in favor of compensating, because I know the demands that the hours that he's putting in, and I'll keep, yeah, we've got a small price to pay.
Well, when we looked at the evaluation, and if you thank you, Sarah, for calculating and coming up with an average, everything was a 4 point something. So showing pretty high achievement in the standards, which is proved through in their own evaluation process, as well as the what you just stated. Do you have any other feedback?
Yeah, I think one area that it's hard to put a dollar value on, but we had some contentious issues with the county and the solid waste program is one thing. And city manager on his own took it to resolve the issues plus many more, but that's a big one. So I think we made a nice history.
Any other commission comments or public comment? Do we have a motion by the commission to approve the city manager's contract request?
I'll make a motion to approve action item G.
Second.
So we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Holden,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against.
Commissioner Maybe?
Four.
Motion passes. Last on our agenda are action items. We have discussed, approved, denied the adoption of Livingston's organizational strategic plan.
Four.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there is nothing new on the strategic plan from our last session. I will note that we didn't get the sentences inserted on page 1 and 2, but they are at the top of each matrix. So under quality reports, the sentences in there, and we'll get that fixed once we go.
I printed it out and I go, oh, man,
All the info's there, it just
Yeah.
didn't end up in the same. But other than that, it is the strategic plan that we developed through the process. I have no changes or improvements to it. I think it's a great product. And once approved, we'll start as a staff looking through it and coming up with actual strategies and actions.
So for the public, we went through a process of strategic planning, and then our last steps were to come up with the goals, the organizational goals versus the overall city goals, and then we decided to take it to the public in this forum just so they could see it before we had a final adoption of the strategic plan. So then it would be detailed out by the city as to the plans and the strategies, actions that, or the actions that the city will take to fulfill these goals. So to give you guys an understanding. Commissioners, do we have any final questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Mike one thing. You did put this out to the public, to our community partners and stuff like that, and we got significant feedback.
I haven't gotten anything yet. Obviously, I got back from vacation, but as far as it goes, and I'll continue to build that in the last year. It had most of the major players in town, and I didn't get any significant feedback on those.
Okay, that's all I have. We worked hard on it. So without time.
Any public comment? So do we have a motion by the commission to,
Yeah, make a motion, we approve action item H.
second? We have a motion by Freeman to approve the adoption of the Livingston Organizational Strategic Plan. We have a second by Meaden. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Copeland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg, Commissioner Maybe,
Four.
Motion passes. Next, we have city manager comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only have one item for tonight. I think we're ready to present you with the enterprise funds and rate changes for the following year, so we can come up with a time or date that works for everyone. I would love to get it in before our next commission meeting, so that we may even have the ability to approve it, our final budget, or at least a preliminary budget during that meeting. The rest of this week is tight. The 11th is a great day for me. I don't know how it's up to the rest of you, which is next Monday.
That is sort of the only day next week until Friday. That works for me. In the evening.
So we have any union contracts are supposed to be signed soon?
You will. We're waiting for the final. The MPA one is pretty much finalized. We're just waiting for the final draft to be. We've agreed on everything. We just have to get it in shape. They meet with the fire department again on Friday, I believe, Friday morning.
So will those be reflected in the enterprise funds?
Well,
Or is
the
it reflected in the general fund? How is that incorporated in the budget?
there was an estimate for the general fund. Once we finish both of them, we'll have to and that's why it'll just be a preliminary budget. Once we get those final numbers, then that'll, at least it could change.
I can't do it Monday. I didn't know that night.
I can do Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well, it sounds like they were brought.
Fine. 11th is fine.
That's the only thing I can't do it. There's another meeting.
Well, we may have to do it without a quorum.
Without all of us.
Because if nothing else works, we're going to do it on Friday, so.
Right.
It looks like
Friday, 9/6.
it's either we do it on Monday without Mel, or we do it at a later day in the week without Mel.
What time would the meeting be on Monday?
It's at 5:30.
Whatever time you guys want, 5:30 is when we usually do it.
Oh, okay.
Does that work for everyone? Can anyone go earlier?
I don't have the 7 o'clock.
Sometimes you don't. So 5:30, you could come for part of it. Okay, thank you, guys. Trouble.
Yeah.
Trouble
Your
some,
vacation
and
plans?
trouble.
So we will set that up and notice it for the 11th from 5:30 to 7:30.
Okay.
City, and that's all you have today.
That's all I have.
City commission comments, one.
Well, with the money thing, in general, the chamber was looking for a couple hundred here and a couple hundred there. And while we're not directly responsible for having caused the action or whatever, I think it certainly is a very positive thing for the city. And on the other hand, we're looking at final costs in the millions and millions. And that this isn't a complaint about that, it's just that I think the general mood of people is that there seems to be an overall escalation of costs. And which is the normal course of things. That's never going to change. But we're in the midst of, very obvious cost changes, i.e. the water treatment plant and the construction. So from what I've heard from quite a few people is that the bills just keep on mounting. And I know none of these things are, you can't not do them. But it does set a general tone, and it almost makes you feel bad when somebody is looking for less than $1,000, and it takes a while to figure that out. Not that it shouldn't either, but I'm just saying that the right now there seems to be a huge bump in what people are very aware of in terms of city costs, again, which are not avoidable. But it does set a tone, so to speak. That's all. Thanks.
Yes, I have my constituents list. So Yellowstone people today put their green cans on the boulevard because it's street sweeper day, so they can't stick them in the street. And I was told that they were not emptied, and I don't know if it was because the green can folks didn't arrive today on Yellowstone, but I've heard that from 2 people on Yellowstone Street. Do you have an answer or no?
I didn't know that was a problem. I'll check into it.
Well, I mentioned it last time about the green can and street sweeper coincide on the same day, so what are people supposed to do? That was my constituency request, and I was told to have them put them on the boulevard,
Yes.
which is what they did, and they did not get emptied. Okay, and can you send me an email so I can just get back to them?
Sure.
Okay. The other is the historical artifacts downtown. This is hearsay, so I will go on record by saying that, but in speaking with a community member, I was told that they walked with Public Works, I'm sorry, it's late, Mr. Woodhall and the downtown street people, and they identified
the artifacts in this sidewalks that were to be saved and that they were spray painted. And this gentleman was told that those things would be put back into the sidewalks. And now is being told that some may and some may not. And I'm not sure how we get this information to the gentleman on exactly what is happening with those artifacts. And if they're not being replaced, then why not? Because I had also asked at a meeting myself during public comment, hey, I noticed the spray paint, what does that mean? And I was told that we're saving those and they'll be incorporated. And he mentioned something about a certain manhole cover not being replaced because it was in the handicap area. And he said, we'll move it down the street. So it's not in the handicap area. I mean, it's not a usable manhole cover anyway. So my frustration is when we tell our community members one thing and we don't follow through and we do something different. It just doesn't.
So I can speak a little bit more.
Sure.
Out of all the artifacts down there, I know there's 3 that are being affected. One is the one you're talking about. It was in the way of the ADA ramp, and I believe that one's being moved. So it's exactly as he said. It's being moved. It is being
He
replaced.
said that they weren't going to move it.
Well, that's not correct.
Okay, so it is going to be moved. I just want to report back to him and I'll be accurate.
There are 2 others that are not being put back in. One was because when it was removed, and this is actually the glass bricks that were from Saxon Fire, when that was removed, the harness, basically it's disintegrated. So that is no longer usable. So they could have fashioned a new one if they wanted to. Someone could have fabricated a new harness, is that the right word? Whatever it is.
Frame.
Whatever the part is that holds it. They would have had to fabricate a new one, and with the cost decided not to. So those.
And whose decision?
That was the building owners.
That was the building, okay.
Yes. So those bricks were going to be returned to them, but I think they were subsequently stolen. So we're actually.
How did that happen?
Someone came and pried them out of the sidewalk and stole them. In the middle of the night. Like, classic smash and grab, I guess. So.
Then I'm gonna shower in my fraternity house. Round shower.
I know, but in a town of 7,000 people in the middle of Main Street, it's hard for me to understand that nobody would see that, but whatever.
Well, they didn't know that. We are putting out requests for information if anybody knows anything to report it. We'll see if we can figure out what happened. But those were stolen. Do you know?
About 50
So-
were taken, which is about a third of the total.
A third of the total were taken.
So that's one of them. And he had multiple sections. Is he choosing not to put all multiple sections in?
Yeah,
Replace?
none of those are going back in. And also Saxon Prior was the other door, and they may be calling them manhole covers, but the doors that went down to the walls. They requested us not to put that one back in. And so since they requested it, we won't put it back in.
So if, just for my own curiosity, then the purple, there are I think three or four sections of purple at Saxon Prior. They were all spray painted, so somebody at some point wanted to keep them.
Yes.
And then are you saying that the owner of Saxon Friar has decided not to replace any of them?
I think none of the frames survived.
And I didn't realize then, so is it every property owner then on the artifacts that they're paying to save them? And they're making that decision?
It's up to them whether or not they wanted them reincorporated, because obviously when you put those doors in, there is a liability risk. And since they are paying for the sidewalks, that's a private endeavor. They can choose whether or not to have those historic artifacts reinserted.
Okay, so like so it's not a city, I think this is where the gentleman then is getting confused, is that I believe what was told to him is it is a city decision to reincorporate those, and this was before your time. So I'm talking about when they first started looking at this downtown project. So I think what he was told is the city was making a decision to reincorporate these artifacts. And if we're making that so the property owner is making that decision, I think that may be where the miscommunication is.
We are, as far as the city goes, we did decide to support that because there's obviously additional cost to that.
And so supporting, I guess I want to understand what that means, because I mean, supporting, if there's an additional cost, you're not going to pay to have the purple blocks put in. So what are we paying for?
So in this case, it was included in the contract that those artifacts would be saved as is and reinstalled. So if there needs to be something refabricated, then that's the property owner's responsibility. But if there's no change to the article, that was included in the contract. The city isn't paying for it. Obviously, the URA is paying for half of it. But that additional cost went into the contract for the sidewalks.
Okay, so the contract had maintaining as is. If there were fabrication issues for safety, that was up to the property owner.
Right, if they needed, something was damaged or was not able to be put back in, then they were responsible if they wanted to restore it to a condition where it could be put back in. Or if they decided that the historic feature was a liability to them as a property owner and they didn't want it put back in, we would honor that request since it's their property.
Okay, thank you. I will make that clarification. Recycling. So my 2.5 short but extremely painfully long years on the city commission. The main topic of discussion has continually been, and I guess I'm frustrated as well, is the lack of access to the recycling and the dump site on the weekends. I mean, everybody, not everybody, the majority of the people in this community work, if not 1, but 2 jobs. I know there's union contracts involved, but what can we do to rectify this problem that the transfer station is open on Saturdays so people that work all week can have access to dump their materials? And I mean, I would assume, you know, a weekday to swap it out. What does it take to get that done?
Well, there's a couple options. One is to add hours, in which case we need to raise rates.
I understand that, but what about a simple closed on Monday, open on Saturday?
That is a matter of being able to hire someone for those different hours. And obviously, that's a change to the work schedule, which would have to be negotiated through the union contract.
And has that ever been tried before?
We're not in the middle of union contracts. We're actually working on some of that for this fiscal year. One of the things we're going to do is, up until this point, the way station operator, the scale house person, has been a part-time employee. We're looking at pushing that to full-time and covering some of those costs. We also need to work with the county because they bring their refuse in on certain days. Obviously, currently, correct me if I'm wrong, so I think Monday's a big day for the county to bring in. So if we closed on Monday, that would be a large impact on the county's operations. So it really take I think it would take a process where, one, we found out what does the community really want as a whole. What are those hours? Is it longer Saturday hours? Because we're already open Saturday mornings during the summer.
No, but you can hardly get your yard raked in there by noon.
Okay, so if Saturday morning is it Saturday afternoon a better time? Is it Sunday or is it, what is, and that's what I'm just saying, we need to figure out what would be useful for people.
And does that
I know that I
Saturday
have-
start this weekend, right?
It started last Saturday.
Oh, it did last.
But it's only till 12:15. Can hardly get the kids up and grab a cup of coffee and a donut and get there by 12:15. I have heard numerous from the community, Saturday full day is what they want.
Okay, so that's
But-
additional hours.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think when you talk about there are options with contract negotiation, and that's a bigger discussion than what we have here, but I don't think additional hours is always the answer.
It's not.
So yes, we can look at the certain days that the county comes and those aren't gonna be good days, or maybe the county needs to change their days, but I really think it can be an offset of another day in the week that's not being utilized.
You can. The problem is it becomes a split shift. You don't have a 2-day weekend. So if you ask someone to work Monday through Thursday, take Friday off, and then work Saturday, that has to be negotiated through the union. That's a non-standard work week.
Or somebody's, I mean, I don't know how many employers are there, but somebody's schedule can be from Wednesday to Tuesday, and they have Tuesday and Wednesday off or something, and they work through the weekend. I mean, there are options, I've seen them. So
There are plenty of options. They would all have to be negotiated through.
I totally get it, but we need to look at it, because it's a problem. We are not serving our community.
The first step would be what additional hours do we need, or what different hours do we need?
I think we need an assessment to look at. I know the community wants Saturdays. So we need to look at an assessment of the rest of the week. What comes in, what's the slow day? What are our options for other people to be closed during the weekday? And what does that look like? I don't know what that weekday is because I don't know what the traffic that comes through is, but we're not serving our community by being closed on Saturdays. Because that's the only day people have access.
In addition to that, it's difficult because it closes at 4:30 as well for a lot of people. So then they don't have any options for drop off of recycling or any.
But it's a 2-gate system. I don't know why we can't keep recycling open longer, but I mean, that's a broader discussion down the road.
Yeah, I think we can be creative and think out of the box besides just
Community,
adding more fees. I think we're smart enough, we can figure it out. But I think it's an important issue that needs to get figured out.
And one of the other things we face is if we really wanted to keep it open later in the day, we would need 2 shifts. Because we start early morning collection, and all collections need to be weighed as well. especially if it's commercial or the county coming across, those all need to be waived because those are revenue generating trucks coming across. So we're already starting early in the morning for the pickups. To push it later in the afternoon, now you're talking you need an additional shift. And those are all possible, all those things are possible. But the question, if we need later shifts during the day and we need to be working on Saturdays, sooner or later we're going to get to additional hours. So it's a tough question to say, what are you willing to give up to get more?
Yeah. And I guess with the traffic that comes in, I keep thinking if there's a Monday and Tuesday that you're closed and your commercial traffic starts coming in on Wednesday through Saturday or something, or Wednesday through Sunday. I mean, I don't know what it looks like, but I think there's some creative ways that we can look at it without necessarily just adding additional time. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I know some city out there has tackled this issue already somewhere. Question of back to the city manager's evaluation. Do you have copies of all the evaluations? Do we have those that are supposed to be presented?
He was given the packet.
Was mine in there? Do we know, Lisa?
Yes.
You have everybody's?
I have everybody's.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Jay's concern about the museum street sweeper. We need a solution for that. If we are having our community museum open and there's street sweeper day, we don't want our residents coming in and parking because we didn't tell them it's street sweeper day and then getting ticketed. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think we need a solution for that.
We can solve it, it just costs money.
So what's the solution that costs money?
We have to sign it.
Put a sign in it?
Well, you have to sign it, so you have to send somebody out to do it. Yeah, we either don't sweep it or we sign it.
So you can take the sign off of Fifth Street and bring it over there.
Sure. I mean, if we wanted to put a sign up that said, hey, street sweepers here, I don't know what kind of reaction that would get from historical people to put street sweeper signs in front of the museum, but we could certainly do that.
Could the museum have a couple sandwich board signs just to put out?
Sure. Yeah. Museum could absolutely do that if they wanted. I know Patricia did that for a while. She had her own sign.
Would that work for you, Jay? If you guys just made your own signs and threw them out there on Street Sweeper Day, or?
Well, I can't speak for Paul Shea on there. Basically, all in the research, but when I parked a block up from the museum, there a guy walked in into the museum, and he said, "Well, is your car gold?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you just got a ticket." Really? And then in the month before, Mr. Cardos said there'll be no tickets issued. Well, I'm here to tell you, I presented evidence A there, and I'm going to be talking to the city judge because I really think there's something really, you come up with a policy. Believe there will be absolutely no tickets, and then I got one. May 15, 60, whatever. But yeah, I got it.
Well, that I think is another issue, but and I'm not saying it's not important, but as far as just the street sweeper, I guess if Paul is interested on communicating something, he can.
Well, it's just so like.
I'm just trying to throw out some.
But when you look at there's somebody directed you to, I don't know, was it city works website, but it says street sweeping in effect from 8 to 3. There, you tell me when's a safe time to park on Chinook. There between 8 and 3. There, who's
They can't specifically schedule with the amount of streets that they have exactly what time they're going to be in.
Well, no, there, so it's sort of
so I'm just trying to help you, Jay, with your museum issue. And so if your director is interested, he can either contact the city manager for some options, or he can contact me. I'd be happy to talk to him.
Okay.
I would like to help find a solution so you still have visitors on Street Sweeper Day. And then the last one is Do we have any estimation, I think the last time I heard it was April, on a summary of the wastewater reclamation funding?
Yeah, we'll have to get that to you either the next meeting or the next meeting. So either be in June or be in July.
Okay. Thank you.
Is June 9th coffee is still on with the food pantry?
Yeah. And if you want to join me on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for bringing it up. I will notice it.
Okay, that's good. June 9th. All right. Question for Matt. Are we still meeting with downtown owners, business owners?
Every Wednesday at 8:30 in the morning at the Livingston Art and Cultural Center.
Well, then that's still.
Yep.
That's still okay. I had the occasion to go to the Mountain Sky Ranch today. Wow. Quite a deal. The only problem was I had to come there for the meeting, so I couldn't stay for the food, so that's a little bit, but, very, very worthwhile. I would like to, I was at my granddaughter's high school graduation. Wow, we've got some great kids. Their talks were unbelievable. And, very proud of all of them. Super proud. I think everything else is pretty good. Yeah, and you?
The only thing I started getting complaints again was people are doing bad habits of parking downtown and staying camped in the same spot for the entire day. Be it maybe because the signs are down and they didn't do it or whatever, but I know we're trying hard. It's been brought up to me again, so need to be the dead horse, but we got some stuff in here. How you?
Mike, do you have an update on anything related to that, to the parking and the ordinance?
The ordinance?
Ordinance, or I'm sorry, the just parking enforcement is what I meant to say.
It's still going on pretty well. We're still getting a significant number of tickets.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, when you can have that guy freed up, I understand that.
And, we obviously we're looking to hire 1 July. They'll still need to go to the academy after that, so that's
Yeah.
But there has been a significant improvement. There's going to be problems. It's impossible to catch them every 2 hours.
Just tell me who it is, I'll have it.
I do have some ideas for next year, but
yeah,
they all cost.
Right.
And that's the problem.
That's all I just, just to say I said it.
That's proactive.
Yeah.
Put this on there.
I had questions based on the, what Sarah brought up as far as the transfer station and recycling, but I think we already discussed that enough. One question to Shannon. Back in the day, it must have been about 4 years ago, we talked about the signage for street sweepers. And did we ever order some signs?
We did. And we started to put those on some of the streets where we got the most complaints, like H Street and 5th and Yellowstone, and we started to install them, and a lot of the residents were very unhappy with them being in the boulevard. So we stopped them.
The times on that. They only say till noon.
I'm wondering if we could use, those somehow in a sandwich board. I'm thinking of those sort of semi-plasticky, smallish signs that we could put along, especially for businesses that are struggling. Because I know we have some of them, and I'm wondering if we can use them somehow.
Number.
I don't know. Might be something to think about or consider.
We have about 50, and our goal was to do that over about a 5-year period to do for most of the 70 miles of streets we have. So we have several with different times for different days that we can put on either the east or west or north or south part of the street. But it just depends on the location.
Other stickers, you know,
They're
like
what?
the
No,
kind
they're
we
actually-
put on our license plates, you know, that if we have to alter. Just trying to think of some solutions for the places like the museum. You know, other than that, I am going to stop. So, moving on. That's it. So, Ms. Roberta would like to say anything. Do I have a motion from the commission for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
Whoa, that smells John.
Second. You didn't speak up fast enough.
We have a motion by Lee and a second by Short. All in favor? All opposed? We end this meeting at 9:05. 8:59.
Sorry.